examined, saying that taxpayers in Hamilton County, Tennessee, will be paying more in taxes. Of course, that claim, that promise, has to be ratified by the county commission. And Jim Coppinger indicates that he's had favorable conversations with several of the members, possible majority. And so now the executive branch makes that proposal, and the legislative branch has it for its own assignment to evaluate what to do about taxes. Now, taxes in the county take several forms against the ownership of land. It's not against directly the ownership of land, but it's against the privilege of owning land and having it protected by the county. It's somehow an odd privilege tax. And then also there are taxes against state-controlled entities that are in retail and provide services and are merchants, and then are compelled to be tax collectors for the state and then the county and the city as well if they're in a city limit, and that's the transaction tax. Altogether, the sales tax in the Chattanooga area is nearly 10% of the cost of a purchase. The problem that the county is facing is one that it has not ever legally contemplated addressing, and that is a petition to Governor Haslam or Governor Bredesen, his predecessor, to demand that the national government bring into line its lender, its chief lender, which is a kind of quasi-governmental entity, but which is really just a private corporation, the Federal Reserve System, which issues a scrofulous currency called the U.S. dollar, the Federal Reserve Note, which has been losing value every year. And in fact, the bank has a goal, has a target of making that value decline at 2% per year. And it's having trouble, if we're to believe the financial press, it's having trouble making that target. In other words, it's not debasing the currency fast enough to suit itself and to suit its grand mal-like calculations about employment and other sort of pseudo standards, which it offers as its rationale for maintaining a very high rate of new money creation, a very high rate of debt monetization, allowing government to get away with all of its programs, all of its ambitions, all paid for on credit and in terms of the dollar, the Federal Reserve dollar. Now, if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it has a very handy CPI inflation calculator, and $100 in January 2007 has the same buying power as $120.93 as of July of this year. That's a calculation indicating that the dollar has lost in 10 years about 20% of its buying power. So what has happened to county government? If the county has maintained its tax rate all that time, it's losing the dollars that it was collecting at the older rate 10 years ago, now really are buying less and less and less in the marketplace. Now, it's interesting that Jim Coppinger and others are in a way, they're complicit with this chagrin, the chagrin of all holders of dollar bills who lose value every year. Even if they invest, they can barely keep up with it. They pay a tax on, and they make a profit in that dollar. They pay a tax on the gains, even though those gains are illusory, right? They're paper gains only in nominal dollars, though the buying power of the dollars in that profit in an investment, let's say in the stock market, is the dollar's buying power has declined, and so you're paying a tax on a gain that's not a real gain at all, but in fact less of a loss than you should be reporting. Right? Anybody who has dollar bills is losing money just by being in that system and doing transactions in that system, investing in that system, trying to save money, making deposits in dollars. You are a loser. You're a loser. And everybody agrees that there's nothing to say about it. And that is because the problem of dealing with it is just too big. It's too big. And the fear, if Mayor Coppinger had even thought for a moment about addressing the injustice of a national strip mining banking operation, the cartel in Washington, the Federal Reserve System, if he ever thought about addressing that, he realizes it would take up his whole career. In other words, you couldn't just have one little letter go to Senator Corker and say, Senator Corker, we'd like you to investigate the Federal Reserve System, which is depriving us of a means of exchange, a medium of exchange which is reliable, and in which we can make our calculations for our county budget. And we're compelled by legal tender laws to accept these scrofulous units of Federal Reserve money in tender payment for debts. And so we can't waive away payments in Federal Reserve notes. We have to keep accepting them. And the bonds that the county would like to issue will be paid back 30 years out in dollars that may be able to buy hardly anything, right? Maybe you can buy a couple of student pencils, a pencil pack at the office supply store for that dollar, and little more. There's nothing we can do here, and so to even think about it, to think about it is to say, well, I'm opening up a can of worms that will just writhe itself into consuming all of my waking hours, and I will then become the mayor of the county that said no to the Federal Reserve System, and that's all I do. That's all I managed to do, is to object to the theft by that bank of the people in the county, and to complain about how we are losing 2% buying power per year and are now having to raise taxes. And that's what the mayor is doing. He's there in front of the county courthouse. Look at the picture on the front page of the newspaper this morning, the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, and there is surrounded by important notables. It's a very impressive picture. I must say, it's a very, very well-arranged media event showing support for the raising of taxes against. Taxes are always against people, right? You don't tax your sons, you tax aliens, and that's what's happening here. We tax aliens, whom are ourselves. Homeowners have been alienated from their rights to own property. People who are in transactions in county stores and garages and restaurants, they've all been alienated so that they are taxed and compelled for a percentage to be taxpayers or tax collectors for the state and the county. And the dollar is, if you go back to, let's say, we're mentioning 2007. Let's say we go back to 1997. What did $100 in 1997 buy? Well, if you had $100 in 1997, that's 20 years ago. You now need $153.86 to buy the same goods. Okay, and that's an official counting from the Department of Labor and its inflation calculator. Always, you've got to remember, there's a built-in bias in all these government figures. Pro-government, right? I'm pro-government. I want you to know that I'm a very pro-government person. Now, but I say that about these figures because they make the government look better than it really is. In other words, the thievery against you, my listener, by the state, the national state and the state of Tennessee, is greater than indicated in the calculator. Okay, it's always these abuses of the people by the state are always much worse than we are led to believe by the official numbers, the official count. And so, I'm looking here at the story without a byline, sad to say, in Chattanooga.com. The first point is that there'll be a hearing in September on this question with the county commissioner. The Mayor Coppinger says the county is on fire. Now is the time to meet the needs. Of course, the things demanded for in the way of higher taxes are always for needs, right? Whether it's capital improvements in public schools, $100 million proposed there for the cartel, whether more money for the Hamilton County Water and Waste Treatment Authority, the WWTA, and that there's a new sewage facility proposed for the northeast part of the county, the Ottawa area. The county would save $43 million in treatment fees, Mayor Coppinger says, and unnecessary storage fees by building another plant out that way. And the story goes on to say, quotes Mayor Coppinger as saying in Chattanooga.com this morning, I have discussed these opportunities with several of the county commissioners over the last few weeks, and I believe now is the best time for us, along with the school system, our business leaders, our economic development team, and the community, to meet those needs. I think Mayor Coppinger should have someone to write a statement for him that sounds like someone would actually say it. These are statements that are written by people who write, and they're written to be read in text, right? They're not written to be said. No one talks like that. These are very thickly tongued phrases, I would suggest. He goes on to say, this has been a difficult budget year despite financial challenges. We have again presented a budget to taxpayers which delivers additional funding for government, education, and public safety needs. Of course, it's always a need, and that's certainly understandable. He says, we operate government in a fiscally conservative manner that taxpayers expect. This is one of Mr. Coppinger's themes. This is why we have been able to deliver a no tax increase budget for 7 years in a row, which means that the last tax increase was in 2010. And when we calculate the buying power of the dollar from then, $100 in 2010 now requires $112.97. So it's almost $113 have to be collected to buy what was collected in 2010, 7 years ago, when the last increase went through. So there's been about, it's about a 12%. I'm not sure if the percentage is correct here, but it's about a 10 or 15% decline in the buying power of the dollar. He says, this is why we have been able to deliver a no tax increase budget for 7 years in a row, while maintaining our AAA bond rating from the 3 top bond rating agencies in the country. These efforts enable us, he says, to borrow money at a low rate, saving taxpayers millions of dollars. And so the problem is really greater than the carelessness by the county commission. It's not that they're careless. It's not that they want to raise taxes, but they are under the pressure from a source that's not identified in today's press. We do not know why things are getting worse, and the secret sauce is written on your green rectangle, and it's in the very scrunched all capital type at the top of the bill, and that's the Federal Reserve note, and that's why we have this need here. And so national government, national economy invariably damages local economy and creates friction between the people in a county like Hamilton County and their elected representatives, whose medium of exchange, right, the dollar, is being debased from afar. Being debased how? Well, it's a kind of an interesting question how that happens, and we sometimes bring this up here on the David Tulis Show, and that is me, David Tulis. Thank you for joining me. Brought to you by Nooganomics.com. The question of the debasement of the value of money is a violation of the 8th commandment. And the 8th commandment says, thou shalt not steal. And it's also a violation of the 10th commandment on coveting, and the 9th commandment on bearing false witness. And the false witness is that the government, or should I say the state behind the government in Washington, pretends that we have lawful coin and lawful currency, that the coin is real and that the currency is real, and that it's not just fiat, made from nothing, right? Created ex nihilo, from the nothing, right? From, you might say, nihilism. From nihilism it comes, and the problem that for us is that the good people, are continually making new dollars. Why? Well, they have important needs. They have war needs, right? They have Iraq invasion. We've killed 2 million people, as many as 3 million people in Iraq and Afghanistan. We Americans have killed them by embargoes, by bombs, by shrapnel, by explosives. We have ruined the genetic lines of humankind for hundreds of years into the future with our depleted uranium munitions. We have killed, according to a report that has not been covered in the American press, but an international consortium of doctors and university medical people have made a calculation of deaths caused by Americans. We have killed 2 to 3 million Muslim people in our 16-year war now in the Middle East, to great expense. Now, how is that expense paid for? Well, it's not paid for by taxing you. The beauty of fiat currency is that we can just tax everybody who holds that currency anywhere in the world, right? Anybody in the world who has that currency is paying the tax, and the tax is called inflation. Inflation eats away the buying power and occurs whenever a new unit of the dollar is created in the lending process by the Federal Reserve System itself, or it's your local bank, your local credit union, when you want that $5,000 loan to buy that vehicle that used car, that pickup truck used, it's only $5,000 that you need to borrow. Well, that money comes from nowhere. It's just made from nothing. It just appears suddenly in your account. That's called inflation, and that's why the whole monetary system is highly unstable, and the system is extraordinarily brittle. And the county government is showing the signs of this brittleness, and it will be paying more in the future. It will be paying more in the future. The system is brittle and fragile. And how has that come about? Do we have good American government? My mother, 93 years old, sometimes says, "Is America well run?" I mean, she asks me very bland questions like that, and she's always shocked when I say, "No, mother, it's not well run." She reads the Wall Street Journal, and she reads the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and so she has, you might say, the conventional narrative, thinking that things can be fixed. We just have to get the right people in order, and get the right program out there, and have the press stop beating up on President Trump, and then everything will be okay. Well, the idea that the system is run well is mistaken, but it's mistaken by good intentions, right? We want Uncle Sam to be successful. We want America to be successful. We are Americans. We love the United States, and so on. But what we don't realize is that the whole system is fragile, and it's being, as Charles Hugh Smith says, it's being thinned by cronyism, by self-serving insiders, fraud, lack of transparency, lack of competition, monopolies, profiteering, and a decline of quality. Systems that become too costly due to the above dynamics are hollowed out, he says, as everyone seeks some way to reduce the costs. Redundancies are stripped out. Staff is slashed to the bone. Senior managers with the most experience are pushed out to lower the payroll costs. Quality control is whacked. Inferior inputs are presented as equal to the higher quality inputs that they replace. These weakened systems are under pressure, and they face a crisis. When there's a little bit too much pressure, they will all fall down. Shoddy materials fail. Inexperienced managers may make hasty and ill-informed decisions. The bare-bones staff is overwhelmed. Equipment that wasn't working properly, wasn't properly maintained to save money, breaks down, and so on. And of course, the banking system is highly resilient, highly robust, impervious to financial crisis. Of course, a financial crisis is simply a lack of confidence when the big investors, the CalPERSs, and the others, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, the multi-billion-dollar state retirement system that's bigger, is a sovereign wealth fund, bigger than state government itself, by the way. Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, a sovereign wealth fund dressed up as a retirement system for state retirees. When it bails out, the whole thing is going to go down. The fragility, Smith says, is writ large. You can bet the entire financial sector is making the same faulty fragility-creating assumptions as a means of maximizing profits. Only one auto loan in 100 will go into default. No near-zero commercial real estate loans will blow up. Every dollar denominated loan in the developing world will be paid back. Blah blah blah. That is what he says is a kind of fantasy land, and we are all taking part in that. And he has I can't really show it very well here, but he has a graphic that shows how there are solutions. The solutions to the modern welfare state are the problem. They are the problem. And you have in the middle circle, there's a state cartel and centralization. And then you have circles that kind of go around it and intersect and interlink. And you have diminishing returns on financial predation. You have demographics. You have an aging populace. Imperial overreach. That's the 16 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. You have disunity among the elites. You have technological disruption. And you have soaring debts. And these things all work together. Many profiting, that 0.5% of the people who are profiting. The 99.5% remainder, that would be you and me. The graphics that Smith puts out there for his readers of twominds.com show that the upper elites are making a killing. Life is getting good for them, so they don't see any problems at all. Yet here, the county commission is seeing problems from their money. Right, the good people's money is declining in value, probably more quickly than the official inflation calculator suggests. at the Department of Labor. And so taxes are going to have to go up. There's a secret problem here, and there is a solution, but the solution is too big to accomplish. It simply can't be accomplished. What has to happen is a major disruption, a major catastrophe. This is David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga Radio.